In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm your host and financial advisor, Rick Everett, and if you're joining us for the first time, welcome in. If you're one of our many regular viewers, welcome back. We've assembled a full complement of panelists for this week's episode. To begin with, Jonathon McCoy, a partner with Market Advisory Group.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
You're very welcome. Partner and financial advisor, I should say. Pat Dougherty, a CPA with Market Tax Services. Trey, Basa, Medicare Advisor with Market Medicare Advisors. And from Eidelman Law Firm, attorney Gerald Eidelman with estate planning. Thank you all so much for being with us. Jonathon, you recently had met with a married couple, Don and Tina, that have over $2 million with their current advisor and feel good about where they stand financially for retirement. But they began having concern as they were referred to a CPA by their advisor to get some tax advice on their portfolio.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting circumstance that brought them into us. Originally, they did have some Medicare questions, but they were actually watching Eye on Retirement one weekend, and it raised more questions than it answered in their circumstance. So they brought some of these questions back to their financial advisor. Got the business card for a CPA that their financial advisor had sort of a loose relationship with, went and had that conversation, and ultimately the CPA gave them a couple of hints and pointers, and they brought some of this advice back to their financial advisor, who was, as an unlicensed person in the tax realm, really was giving them sort of a feeling that they were lost and unable to get this advice that they were looking for tax management, since most of the retirement account money that they had not been taxed yet. I mean, this is a common challenge with the current generation of retirees. It's the first group of folks that have gone through an entire career planning for retirement having not paid taxes on the majority of the money that they're going to live on. So they were readily aware of some of these issues that we talk about episode after episode on Eye on Retirement, and just not able to get the answers. They didn't have the whole team all in one place to discuss with the CPA, with the financial advisor, what are the changes we need to be making, and they ended up having to be sort of the messenger in this situation. And they left feeling like they were more lost, confused, and frustrated than they were before they started asking these questions. So that was the challenge going forward, and the main reason they came to talk to us in the first place was, can we talk to one of your CPAs about what some of these tax issues that may be lying ahead? And that was immediately when we decided to sit down with Pat and our tax team to make sure that we could get all those people on the same page at the same time.
Pat Dougherty of Market Tax Services, how often do you find people with these challenges, as the baby boomer generation is the first generation to be retiring after a full career of savings in accounts that have not had taxes paid on them?
Yeah, a lot of times they're not aware of what's going to happen to that. And working with a broker and a separate CPA can be very frustrating at times, because they have to bring the information back from one person to the other person, and they don't translate it right. And it's a perfect example of not working with a full financial team could cause frustration and several thousands of dollars.
Now, Pat, Jonathon, our process at Market Advisory Group is to get the CPA and the financial advisors involved in the same conversation at the same time in the same room to try and identify which strategies will not only solidify income needs in retirement, but also to save on taxes and expenses over time. Did the consultation you provided, Jonathon, cost the couple anything?
Ultimately, no, it didn't. And one thing I try to prepare people for is, and what we do prepare people for is, this is not a one sit-down type of experience. Normally, we're having 2, 3, sometimes 4, or even 5 meetings before we sit down with a full-fledged plan around how do we keep the IRS at bay, how are we reducing the overall tax expense throughout your retirement, not just what you're doing about your current or previous year's taxes. So it is a bit of a process, and this is what we find very frequently as folks are going in maybe with some tax questions or with some concerns about what's going on in the market, talking to their financial advisor, and the whole extent of that conversation starts and ends with what do we do with your investments? And if you're only exploring that one very narrow sliver of information in your retirement planning, as Pat mentioned, the IRS is your significant business partner when it comes to retirement planning, and it's a huge expense that a lot of people have not addressed as far as understanding how much of that money in your 401k, how much of that money in your IRAs or Roth IRAs is actually yours, as opposed to what might wind up in Uncle Sam's hands.
You know, that's a lot of pressure to put on a person as they're coming to a financial advisor, and the financial advisor is ready to spit out all kinds of ideas on portfolios and things along those lines. But then when it comes to the actual tax planning, they're like, okay, here, go see Jerry down the street and then come back and tell me what Jerry said.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that game when we were kids and we'd all sit in a circle and you'd whisper something in someone's ear and it would come all the way back around and be a totally different story.
Lots of things get lost in the mix, and that's why we find it important that the folks that you see sitting at this desk today are the folks that end up in the conference room with us one-on-one. We on several occasions will have myself, tax advisor, Medicare advisor, and estate planning attorney all in the same conversation at the same time, because so many of these different factors will impact a wide variety of your areas of financial planning. We'll talk with Trey in a little bit about the Medicare impacts of if you have rising income, especially with cost of living increases on Social Security, everyone's expenses are going up these days. People are needing more money to live on than ever. Those types of things have downstream effects on what is your tax rate, how much are you going to pay for your health insurance, what's it going to cost your heirs and your beneficiaries, and if you're talking to a financial advisor that's not licensed in any of those areas, as I mentioned before, you're essentially only looking at a very narrow sliver of retirement planning. And as a financial advisor myself, having the licensed professionals has completely changed the game from a financial planning standpoint for our clients, because now we can address all these issues and we can give our clients an accurate idea of what is retirement actually going to cost me. Whereas most people are finding this out 5, 10, 15 years too late, and then it's too late to do anything about it.
Many of you out there watching probably have a financial advisor, but who's looking out for your estate plan? Who's helping you to mitigate consequences from the IRS? And who's helping you with your Medicare decisions? If you don't have a whole team looking out for your best interests, you're missing big pieces of the puzzle. At Market Advisory Group, we practice the holistic approach to retirement planning, from the financial aspects to estate planning, tax planning, and Medicare advising, and we do it all under one roof for your convenience. Operators are standing by right now to take your call for a complimentary, no-obligation consultation at 316-252-8707, and be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. We'll be back with more of this episode of Ion Retirement right after this.
When people work with Market Advisor Group, they get a feel of sense of family. There's a lot of relationships that are made and going on in this conference room, and we really take a lot of pride in that and a lot of satisfaction in that.
Every client we work with, we make a custom-made plan to fit them and help reach their goals in life. Another thing that makes us unique is we want to meet regularly with our clients and have reviews.
Market Advisory Group, we have a process, and the process we take people through is first to understand what they have, understand who they are, and then we put together an income plan for them and show them how they can look forward to retirement and not look, though retirement is going to be a stressful time. It needs to be a stress-free time.
A few unique features of working with Market Advisor Group is holistic in-house financial consultants. We've got an in-house CPA, Joshua, an in-house estate planning attorney, Gerald, an in-house Medicare advisor, Bill. We rely on all of those professionals for, again, additional service within our consultative process, making sure that we've got the advice and the expertise behind the recommendations that we make.
You know, as an advisor, I'm not there to sell them one way or the other. I'm there to educate them, to let them know what their choices are. Then I try to help them make the right choice where they can save money and feel confident in their decision.
Absolutely the best part of my job is getting a stack of paperwork from somebody and they don't know what to do, and then I can turn around and give them back a tax return, but also to be able to explain what they can do next year that will give them a better answer than what they had this year.
When we've got clients that are calling and they need to help out a child or need to help out a grandchild or need to help themselves out and they're in a situation they didn't expect to be in, I really relish the opportunity to help them through that, help them make the educated decisions in somewhat stressful situations, because a lot of folks don't have that type of counsel.
We meet with so many people one-on-one in this office that don't ever end up becoming a customer or doing business with us, and that's okay. But when they leave our office, we know that we've helped them either get some answers to some of the questions they had or get some clarity on maybe their own path.
But one of the things that we hear all the time is, I wish I would have met you guys 10 years ago, because how much further could I be down the road? Well, Johnny Appleseed said, you know, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And so if we can help people today going forward, that just brings an incredible amount of comfort and excitement for us to come to work every day.
Hi, and welcome back into Ion Retirement. In the prior segment, we were talking about Don and Tina. Don and Tina, who utilized one of the big box store financial advisors and found that when it came to tax advice, they were expected to be the courier between the financial advisor and a CPA they'd never met before. Jonathan, let's talk about the concerns Don and Tina had with handling their estate. They had a blended family situation, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Don and Tina came to their relationship. This was a second marriage for both of them. They both had children before with their prior marriages, so that the blended assets were something we needed to be careful about, and why we got Gerald and our estate planning team involved really early on. It's kind of interesting. We talked in the first segment so much about the tax issues that can arise and the issues that can arise with not having a tax planner or a tax professional available to plan around that. But then we started asking them questions. What are your assets? And Tina had, when they were married, they moved into the same home. Tina had her own home. She sold that, and they actually bought a vacation property for use amongst all their family members. And they wanted that to be handled in a specific way where one part of the family is getting a portion of the estate, another part of the family is getting another portion. They had some spendthrift concerns around one of the daughters and some grandchildren, not wanting to leave them with 6 figures all at once if something happened to both of them at the same time. Because that can cause some pretty significant negative impacts on people's lifestyle for your beneficiaries. So they wanted to do what they could to not just protect their estate and the value of their assets for their beneficiaries, but dealing with these blended family situations can be tricky in a lot of cases. If you just have something as simple as beneficiaries listed on all of your assets, ultimately that's not maybe quite the level of detail or description that you need so that your beneficiaries can handle all of these things without having to deal with probate going through the state. And like I said, that's why we get Gerald and his team involved early on in the process.
Gerald Eidelman with Eidelman Law Firm. Surely when you're doing estate planning for somebody who is in a blended family versus somebody who's only been married once and is still with that same spouse, it's got to be incredibly different and a lot more tenacious, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you have two families that usually have come together when the children are adults, they don't have the relationships that regular siblings would have. And one of the questions we have to look at is, how do we prevent a disaster from coming apart, the whole everything unraveling because there'll be factions that may be fighting against each other. The most important part is, what do the individuals, the couple, want to pass on to each other, to their children? In this case with the vacation property, they wanted to make it available for all their children. They had put the money together, they bought it. They wanted to preserve that as a spot for children from both sides of the family to have use of it. And so we had to do a special plan just for that. We had to set up a trust to hold the property. We had to put money in there to maintain the property, and agreements with the different parties that would, after the death of Don and Tina, that they would be able to contribute money to continue to have this property available to everybody. And the hope is that whenever no one wanted to have it anymore, they would sell it and split it between all of them. But there were things that Tina came into the marriage that she had inherited from her mother, and this was money that was part of it was retirement account funds and an IRA, inherited IRA. Part of it was just cash, and she still held it in her name. And a lot of the times, she used that money to pay for expenses to fix the house. She, go on vacations, and she wanted that money to eventually go to her side of the family since it came from her side of the family. But she also wanted to take care of uh, Don, and make sure that while he was alive, he would have access to this money if necessary for an emergency. So again, you have to work with trust to hold this money separate to make sure that, yes, the surviving spouse can have use of that money, but whatever is left after the surviving spouse dies, it goes to the children.
Now, once division of assets and probate protections are in place, are there other concerns that people need to be aware of?
Absolutely. People sometimes think of estate planning as death planning. It's what happens after we die. But that's not entirely true. I think part of estate planning is life planning. Because one of the things that are most relevant to you when you're alive is who's going to take care of you if you are incapable of taking care of yourselves. And the only way to do that, to accomplish that, is to have powers of attorney for finances, powers of attorney for health. This will give each of them the authority to act on the spouse's behalf, and might set up some of the children to be the backup if one of the spouses passes away. If these things are not in place before the person becomes incapacitated, then we have to go to court and spend a lot of money to get guardianships and conservatorships.
It's a tedious process and a lot of moving parts just in the estate planning portion itself, as well as the financial aspects, tax planning and Medicare.
And like we mentioned before, this all started with some pretty simple tax concerns and ultimately evolved into much more than that, in identifying through our consultation, here are the questions that they needed to be asking, but they didn't know to ask, because a lot of times that's our biggest limitation, is not knowing what we don't know.
Who's looking out for your best interest in retirement and retirement planning? And is it an individual or is it a whole team? And if it's not a whole team, what piece might you be missing? At Market Advisory Group, we practice the holistic approach to retirement planning, from financial aspects to the estate planning, tax planning, and Medicare advising. And we've put it all together under one roof for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary, no-obligation consultation, operators are standing by right now to take your call at 316-252-8707. Again, 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. We'll be back with the final segment of this show right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have, by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Hi, and welcome back into the final segment of this edition of Eye on Retirement, where we've been visiting about Don and Tina, who came to Market Advisory Group with just a couple of very basic questions, and we ended up helping them untangle quite a bit of retirement things that were going on that needed addressed and could be done a little bit better than what they had been done. We've discussed how the team approach with Market Advisory Group is here to do so much more than just give investment advice. Addressing growing tax concerns is one of the things we've talked about, building lasting estate plans for retirees. Jonathan, how does the team then help with insurance and Medicare needs?
Yeah, so in Don and Tina's circumstance, it's a perfect example. Don had moved down to part-time work. He's actually a retired physician and had been working part-time with some online physician care clinics, helping people all across the country, but was looking to wind down that part-time work. Part of the reason he held on to some of that work was for health insurance needs. So he was already past age 65, was eligible for Medicare at any point in time, but his question was, okay, when I lose my insurance through my employer, then what? You know, what's the time frame? How do I avoid delay penalties? What's the actual cost going to be? Because that's something they were completely, essentially clueless about between Don and Tina. And Tina was around 8-9 years younger than Don in this case. So the challenge of if Don retires, Tina's probably going to want to retire too. That's part of retirement. You enjoy it with your spouse, right? So Tina wanted to know if she retired, especially even a few years prior to Medicare eligibility at age 65, what's she going to do for health insurance, and what's that cost going to be out of pocket? And that's where we get Trey and the rest of our Medicare team involved, just like we've talked about with taxes, just like we've talked about with estate planning. The health insurance costs and overall health care costs are something that is incredibly important for us to be able to project for our clients, because if you don't have a wrangle on one of your largest expenses in retirement, you don't have a wrangle on retirement at all.
Trey Basa, Market Medicare Advisors. So Don comes to you. He says, what are my first steps?
First steps when moving from workplace insurance to Medicare, we have to make sure we get the right paperwork. Number one, we fill out the CMS L564 and CMS 40B. These are papers that prove that Don had workplace insurance, credible coverage, while he was working past age 65. Filling all of that out, that'll get Social Security to start Part A, Part B, no hassle. And once we have Part B started, that starts a clock. We have a 6-month window to get into a supplement plan with no underwriting or even look at Medicare Advantage plans. But that time frame is a hard 6 months. You can't, if you go past that, you have to go through underwriting.
Now, Trey, is that the only time that a person can get into a Plan B without underwriting?
No. So we have an initial enrollment period and that's a 7-month window around your 65th birthday. So Don worked past 65, but his wife could get into a Medicare supplement plan around her 65th birthday with no problems. It's 3 months before, the month of, and 3 months after her 65th birthday. She has that golden ticket opportunity.
Now, how soon before anticipating being able to be enrolled in Medicare should someone start the process?
We recommend looking at 3 to 4 months ahead of time. So Don's approaching that time period where he wants to leave workplace insurance. 3 months before that retirement date, we recommend coming in, talking to us, and getting that time frame, those papers filled out. Tina, on the other hand, has a lot more time, a year or so, right? In that time frame, we can really deep dive, talk into the different routes that we have for Medicare, as well as set up some hard dates. We need to meet again this time. We need to have paperwork filled out and turned in this time. It's generally 3 to 4 months, whether you work past 65 or you're approaching 65.
So Jonathan, in Don and Tina's instance, they came to you with just a couple of very basic questions, but it involved into planning that involved virtually every aspect of their retirement plan. Is that something you find quite often?
Right, and frequently I believe the challenge is, as I mentioned in a previous segment, we don't know what we don't know. So a lot of people don't know what questions to be asking, and our process has evolved significantly since we began working with all of the in-house licensed professionals that we do, especially in the Medicare department. That's a learning circumstance for us as financial advisors all the time, is what do we need to be doing with things, for example, around health savings accounts. If you've had an HSA or a flexible spending account through your employer retirement plan or through your employer savings vehicles that are available to a lot of folks these days, all these little details and challenges that no one really knows what questions to be asking. And our process is built around the hundreds, if not even thousands or more households that we meet with on an annual basis, keeping up to date with the current rules and knowing what questions to be asking you. If I sat down and asked someone today, what is your plan with your health savings account as you approach Medicare age? Most people are going to give me a blank stare. And that's exactly why we have these in-house professionals, for when those unanswered questions or unanswerable questions come up, we know to ask them. Our process is built around, here's what our clients are putting in place for a successful retirement. This is the path you should follow.
How many stunned looks do you get from clients in a first meeting that are currently working with another financial advisor, but then they find all of the entities that come to work to make a complete retirement plan?
It's pretty easy to notice when someone starts sort of closing up in their chair around the conference room of, we didn't know to ask that. Is this going to be a big problem? What do we do now? And that's exactly why we have this entire team available, so that we don't have to, and like in Don and Tina's circumstance, we didn't have to give them another CPA's business card. I brought Pat down the hall. We sat down and had the chat with them around the tax issues to not just alleviate the concern that they had, but tell them there is a plan to manage this. There is a way to make this give you a more predictable outcome on your retirement and the cost to your retirement, as well as the health insurance, as well as the estate planning. But more often than not, those are circumstances where we are asking those questions. Have you talked to your financial advisor about what the tax implications of your retirement accounts are going to be to your beneficiaries? And if we get those blank stares, as you just so eloquently mentioned, then we know immediately that we need to get those professionals in the room right away.
Retirement is a team sport, and it takes the whole team to have an effective plan and manage your retirement. Financial aspects, estate planning, tax planning, Medicare advice, where does it all come from? It comes from one team working together for you at Market Advisory Group. People are standing by right now to take your call for a complimentary no-obligation consultation at 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. That's all the time we have for this week. I'm Rick Everett, along with the entire team, reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Legal services are offered by Eidelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.